Thanks, Krish. And I'm hoping that you're seeing a nice thread of continuity as we build up from the basic idea of DevOps and how application development is done in the new world, how it is better done now and going forward than it was in the past. And then a review of some of the basic technologies of middleware, some of which have been around for many, many years, some of which are perhaps newer. And then, is that better? People hear me better now? Okay. And then, as you just heard from Krish, a little more detail about platform as a service and what that means, how it works, what some of its implications are. And now, in this sort of fourth talk in the series here, we really want to bring it all together with this idea of xPaaS, bringing the JBoss way, the way that JBoss has been doing things for years, to an even higher level in the world of cloud, and open hybrid cloud in particular. Okay, so I know there's maybe a little reluctance to raise hands, but I want to try just a little bit more. So I saw a few hands go up of folks who are developers out there, who write code every day as part of their day job. A few hands are already using JBoss EAP, so you're therefore familiar with Java EE and some of the enterprise Java standards out there. How many people have already used a platform as a service of any kind, whether you've logged in to Amazon Web Services and played around there, maybe Heroku? I mean, obviously it'd be great if the answer is OpenShift, but any of the platform as a service type offerings out there, how many people have already tried? A couple hands. So we have some folks who have a sense of what that experience is like, where rather than in the traditional way, having your development workstation and downloading numerous different technologies, libraries, SDKs, installing them, configuring them, getting them all to work together, figuring out what version depends on what version, and then getting this intricate environment all tuned up on maybe your Apple MacBook or your Windows laptop, and then starting to build, write some code, maybe using Eclipse, maybe you're old school like me and you're using Emacs. You write some stuff, you get this wonderful application using all these different libraries, all humming along, and then it's time to go deploy this mess, right? So you've got all this stuff so perfectly tuned on your laptop, and then you got to go figure out how to put it on a staging system somewhere. So recreate that whole world that you've already established in your local environment, go redo it on this staging environment. Go through the same nightmare again, right? Download a bunch of stuff, make sure you got the right versions, make sure you've set all the dot files and XML files and database connection strings all correctly in all the different, in all the different components. You get it all working again, and then you do whatever testing needs to be done, and then it's time to put the thing into production, right? And this is where, now having gone through this waterfall-like procedure that Chris described in the DevOps talk, now you throw the whole mess over the transom, over the wall, to the poor guys in ops, who then have to go recreate that world in the production side of things, where there may be different kinds of machines, you have different amounts of memory and disk space, and maybe some assumptions that were made in the development and staging environments are now no longer valid in the production environment. You see where I'm going with this. It's a complicated mess. Right now, let's compare that to the opposite extreme, where everything is happening in the cloud, right? From that very moment that as a developer you start setting up your environment, developing your application, integrating with other pieces out there, you get it up to a certain point where you want to test it and then move it into production. If that's all happening in one consistent, unified, coherent environment, so much of that complexity of moving from development to staging to testing to production is eliminated, right? It's just taken right out of the picture. And that starts to get to the agility and starts to hopefully inspire in your minds the possibilities of this new way of developing enterprise apps. Now, a number of famous applications out there have been using web-based approaches and platforms that are arguably platform as a service, and created very successful applications for a number of years, right? Famous things like Facebook and Twitter and so on. Maybe consumer types of applications like your Pinterest and things like that. There are probably ones here in Korea that I don't even know about, but which are equivalent. The premise here with xPaaS and the JBoss Way is that agile platform as a service based approach of rapid iteration, continuous integration, that new world of cloud is equally valid for big, complex enterprise applications that businesses run mission-critical functions on. It's not just for consumer apps. So we know that business is changing faster than ever. And one of the problems that we're trying to solve here is that since businesses are changing faster than ever, and their demands on IT, and we talked a little bit about this already, are vastly increasing, the ability of the traditional approach to keep up with that is lagging, right? The traditional procedure that I described of a developer setting up a development environment locally, building up something, and then going through that heavy waterfall approach to go through staging and testing and production isn't going to allow them to keep up. And a little aside here, there has been this swing back and forth for as long as I've been in IT, which is embarrassingly long, and I won't say how many years, but it seems that there's this every couple of years cycle where people proclaim the death of the packaged app, and then they revert and they go, the death of custom, bespoke applications. Nobody needs to build anything from scratch anymore. You should just use a software as a service, and it already has enough knobs and dials to customize it, so no custom app should be needed anymore. Well, both extremes are crazy. Neither extreme is ever going to win out. And in a survey that was done by Forrester last year of senior IT folks, what they found is it's pretty much 50-50. At the end of the day, most big enterprises out there have a bunch of stuff that's off the shelf, apps, packaged apps, software as a services, and 50% is coming from the other side, coming from homegrown, built-in, Java, C++, whatever, traditional home-built applications that are critical to their business. And at the end of the day, both are important. Both will continue to be important. And what's probably even more important than whether a given application is homegrown or off the shelf is what kind of environment does it run in? Does it, is it running in that sort of legacy part of your data center that isn't even yet virtualized, or is it something that's going to run in the public cloud? But at the end of the day, the platform on which those things run, again, whether it's something you built in-house or whether it's something that you're getting as a third-party, essentially already completed application, the platform that those things run on is more important than ever. And we argue here that the platform that comprises both the right middleware components and the right underlying platform that enables those components as a service is really what's needed for the future of enterprise application development. And we've labeled this approach, our strategy, our vision, and the particular way that we're going to offer and provide these middleware technologies, middleware capabilities in the cloud as xPaaS. And just a real quick, where did this terminology come from? So in the last couple of years, right, as the basic idea of PaaS itself, platform as a service, became reasonably stable and understood in the industry. I mean, there's still plenty of people who are maybe still struggling with it, but it's actually now been around for a few years and has some stability to it. What you ended up with is specialists coming in and having very narrowly focused platform level offerings that they would offer as a service, and they would sort of further specify it as not just a platform as a service, but let's say integration platform as a service, or xPaaS, or let's say BPM platform as a service, BPM PaaS. And so you ended up with this whole flood of these micro specialists coming out with their sort of, flavor of the day variants of platform as a service. And it was Gartner who just kind of a little bit quixotically took the letter X and put it there as a variable, saying, okay, there are all these special passes. We'll have an X to represent that there are all these different specializations, and that sort of defines the category of specialized passes at large. So we decided that's kind of clever, and we'll take that. And so what it really means is that there are all these different specializations, and it's a little bit of an extension to the basic PaaS, an extension of the basic idea of platform as a service. And we're going to run with that because we believe that that's what is really required to develop enterprise-grade applications. Right? The whole reason that middleware exists in the first place, the whole reason why the IT industry created these different categories of middleware was to provide higher levels of abstraction for enterprise app developers to work with, so they didn't have to keep reinventing the wheel. What it boils down to at the end of the day is middleware just keeps raising the level of abstraction that enterprise app developers work within so that they can be more efficient, they can produce apps that are more reliable, more adaptable, more flexible, and more portable. So Chris did a great job of explaining the internals of OpenShift, and I won't completely rehash it here, but I want to echo the explanation that Chris gave you and mention that OpenShift is by far the most enterprise-grade platform as a service out there. By virtue of its unique architecture, right, it gives you that sort of isolation, the multi-tenant capabilities with the isolation, the security, and the reliability that it takes to run enterprise-grade, mission-critical applications in support of a business. So unlike some of the other platform as a service offerings out there, which may give you some of the self-service and ease of use benefits, they don't give you the rock-solid enterprise-grade capabilities that OpenShift does. So a premise, a starting point, a necessary foundation for the vision of xPaaS is to have that enterprise-grade platform as a service underneath. Now, so to really get down to what is it that we're trying to offer here, right? So an enterprise application is complex, right? It consists of many different components, each of which is likely running in a different environment. Some may be in, again, that sort of deep, dark, not even yet virtualized corner of your data center. Some may be virtualized but not yet sort of service-enabled. Some of your components for a given application may be running on a public or private infrastructure as a service. And part of the application may very well depend on integration with an external third-party software as a service, such as your Salesforce.com or your Workdays or your things like that. So enterprise applications are complex. As Krish already explained, one of the fundamental value propositions of platform as a service is to improve developer productivity, improve the efficiency with which those components can be developed and tied together, right? That takes work and risk out of the process of building and running enterprise apps. And the idea of xPaaS is simply, let's take that a step further. Let's offer services at an even higher level of abstraction, further enhancing the productivity and reliability with which developers can create the different components and tie them together and turn them into a viable mission critical enterprise application. So that's the idea. Now let's walk through what some of the specific xPaaS offerings that we laid out when we first rolled out our xPaaS strategy last September at Java 1, some of the progress that we've made over the last year and what you can expect here going forward. So we think of the xPaaS architecture as, first of all, being founded upon the application container. And I mean container in the Java EE sense, not in the Docker sense. I know there's a couple of meanings of container in some of what we've been talking about throughout the day today. So this is a different kind of container from Docker. An application component that runs in a particular gear, as Krish described, would itself run on a Docker container. But there's the container that houses, let's say, the Java logic, or the Node.js logic, or the PHP logic that is part of a given component within the application. That's a different kind of container, right? So the application logic container, that's what goes into xPaaS. That is basically Java, JBoss EAP. And then on top of that, we have, as the first components of middleware that we're bringing to market in this xPaaS environment, are integration, BPM, and mobile. So I'm going to quickly walk through some of the features and characteristics of each of those aspects, and then we'll wrap it up. So application PaaS, right? Again, it's just JBoss EAP. This has actually been available on OpenShift for over a year before we really kind of fully conceived our xPaaS vision and strategy. This was already there as the bedrock of the strategy, and so it's there today, and you can use it today. And what's interesting about it is that there's nothing special about it from the standpoint of what you need to do as you build your app, right? It's not like you have to go build your app in a special way or code against specific APIs in order to take advantage of EAP on OpenShift and to take advantage of xPaaS, right? You're just writing a Java EE application. But what the Platform as a Service user experience does for you is it takes a lot of the configuration off the table, right? Because by virtue of the PaaS dashboard, right, you're checking boxes and making certain configuration selections with a more graphical drag and drop kind of environment. You're not having to go hand edit all those .xml files that it typically takes to configure an application running in a Java EE environment. So again, the foundation, application PaaS. So the next piece, integration PaaS. This is based on our JBoss Fuse technologies. Again, Fuse incorporates Apache Camel, the next generation lightweight service bus technology, Apache AMQ, so the next generation messaging, right, superset of the Java JMS technologies, basically everything you would need to do to integrate different components of your application together. This has been available on OpenShift in developer preview for about half a year now, and we expect to have general availability of iPaaS, in other words, JBoss Fuse on OpenShift in the next couple of months, definitely by the end of the year. So moving along very well, rolling out against the strategy that we announced last September at Java 1. So BPM PaaS. I mentioned in the earlier talk that in the automate upper layers of the JBoss middleware stack, we have our JBoss BRMS, the rules system, and BPM, business process management. There's, in conversations we've had with a number of customers and just what we're observing in the market, there is an already significant demand and increasing demand to have the process level abstraction, the business process way of building applications enabled in the cloud. So very quickly on the heels of iPaaS, we're going to bring out BPM pass. There are two aspects of this I wanted to bring to your attention. In building an application using the BPM approach, there is in a way two phases, right? There's the process modeling, where you use a graphical designer to define processes, draw lines that essentially represent the dependencies between steps in a process, create decision points, create policies or criteria for what it takes for a given work item to move from one step to another within a workflow. All of that capability in the process modeler, that's one aspect of what will be cloud enabled. And then of course the other aspect is taking the model that is generated by that graphical interface, which is some coded representation of a set of workflows and their dependencies, and then running that in a runtime environment. So the actual running of the BPM aspect of an application is also cloud enabled. Another important thing to note about this, as well as the other xPaaS offerings, is that some of the components that are integrated together may be running on a private PaaS, some may be even outside of the PaaS world, some may be running in a public PaaS, so in OpenShift.com, OpenShift Online. The xPaaS vision is to, and consistent with the open hybrid cloud approach, is to seamlessly incorporate both private on-premise running as well as public cloud-based components. Now the last piece is mobile platform as a service, and I want to take this opportunity to do a little aside on mobile. So just last week we announced the acquisition of Feed Henry, a small company based in Ireland who has been developing what has been called in the industry a mobile backend as a service offering for a number of years, and they've got great traction, a great customer list, and a great architecture for building the back-end aspects of mobile applications, right? So the mobile-specific back-end capabilities that are required to either mobile enable an existing app or build a mobile-first app from the ground up. So there are things, unlike traditional non-mobile apps, traditional desktop apps, that are unique to mobile, right? There are things like push notifications. There's things like data synchronization, because oftentimes the mobile device becomes disconnected, so you have to support that disconnected operation, right? There are unique security implications and considerations when you're developing mobile applications. So the Feed Henry technology is a great addition to the JBoss middleware family and a great complement to the capabilities that we have already had in the family for a while. Another thing I want to point out about Feed Henry is that it also takes us in a new direction in a completely different dimension, and that is in the dimension of languages. So you're probably aware that JBoss middleware has been very Java dominated for most of its lifetime. And while we support integration with other languages, and we certainly support other languages that run on the JVM, so Scala and Clojure and Groovy and languages like that, and OpenShift has also significantly expanded beyond Java in its support for PHP and Node.js and Ruby and other languages. Feed Henry is actually built partly in Java, but mostly in Node.js, and supports a Node.js style of and actual language for its back-end components. How many folks in the room are familiar with Node.js? Okay, some hands go up. How many folks are actually using Node.js today? They're developing Node.js applications in their enterprises. Okay, couple. All right, it's emerging, right? It's getting started. Of the new languages out there, Node.js is the one that has really gotten the most traction, adds the most complementary value to the mainstream Java paradigm, And we see it going very far. We don't see it displacing Java. It's not like, a year from now, everybody's going to be doing everything in Node.js. But Node.js has some characteristics and some properties that make it very compelling, particularly for enterprise applications. And so we're very excited about the fact that with the acquisition of the Feed Henry technologies, we're really making a strong sort of expansion into the world of Node.js. So that really is the story for the moment here. I've touched on the tips of many icebergs here. Obviously, we could go into much greater depth of any one of the middleware technologies, its particular roadmap, and how it will play out in the world of xPaaS on top of OpenShift. I hope I've given you a little bit of a sense, though, of just the possibility and the sheer acceleration and enhancement of the enterprise application developer experience in the world of xPaaS. You're going to see some great things in the way of the xPaaS dashboard within OpenShift, this sort of unified, coherent way to develop enterprise apps using JBoss middleware in this consistent set of patterns, consistent dashboard, consistent way of configuring, consistent way of testing, consistent way of doing continuous integration, all those important day-to-day things that the enterprise application developer is concerned with. So what I want to leave with here, though, since it's if not the last and getting to be near the last segment of the day, is sort of come all the way back up to the surface and remind you how these technologies that Chris and I have been talking about fit into the bigger the bigger Red Hat picture, right? So we've been talking about JBoss middleware and OpenShift and how those two pieces work together. But now keep in mind that once you start to put those together in combination with the Red Hat Enterprise Linux OpenStack platform, right? So you're running all of this stuff on top of OpenStack and infrastructure as a service, all taking advantage of unique operating system level capabilities in Linux, further taking advantage of virtualization within Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization and software-defined storage, as you heard about in Nigel's talk on Ceph and the Inktank technologies earlier today. And all of these layers of the stack managed at their respective levels by an appropriate management technology. The management technologies themselves sort of interoperating and complementing each other so that an operator in the data center, or going forward, the virtual data center that includes the sort of the world of open hybrid cloud, public and private cloud, as well as your private infrastructure, all of that working together, provided by Red Hat. This is the most unique and most compelling stack for building and running enterprise applications in the market today. Only Red Hat has the unique combination of deep operating system knowledge, deep virtualization knowledge, knowledge of how to do things in the cloud, and that deep developer savvy based on JBoss middleware. And all of this as open source, all of this coming from the world of open source, all of this having the advantage of the rapid innovation that happens in that open community, that participative world of open source that no single proprietary vendor can hope to compete with now. So I want to leave you with that idea of xPaaS, JBoss middleware, OpenShift, and how that fits into the greater Red Hat stack. And the more of these things that you have, the more the synergies you'll enjoy within the Red Hat stack without being locked into any single technology. So with that, we look forward to working with you on your various IT projects. We just want to build and learn together and evolve all of these technologies without lock-in, without locking you into a way of doing things or holding you hostage in certain financial ways. It's all about open. It's all about the power of community innovation, and we think it's an exciting way forward. So thank you very much. Kamsahamnida.